Welcome to Real Crime Stories, the podcast where you get daily reports on true crime stories from around the world. In today's story, we head down to California, where two hooded figures sprint through the affluent streets of Woodland Hills, California. It was 4:53 p.m. on January 23, 2017, and blood was still fresh on their hands. Behind them, in the backyard of a $1 million home, a celebrated hairstylist lay dying on his own patio, stabbed repeatedly in the neck, face, and chest. At that same moment, his teenage daughter was driving home from school, unaware that she was minutes from stepping into a nightmare she would never escape. This is the story of Fabio Simentilli, a charismatic and successful Italian immigrant who built an empire in the beauty industry. But more than that, it is a story of greed, betrayal, and a calculated murder orchestrated by the person who should have loved him most. The first 911 call came at 4:54 p.m. A terrified teenage girl, 16-year-old Isabella Simentilli, had arrived home to find her father lying in a pool of blood on the patio. The scene was brutal. Paramedics rushed in as her screams echoed through the neighborhood, but they couldn't save him. Fabio, just 49, was pronounced dead at the scene. At first, the crime appeared to be a burglary gone wrong. Security footage from a nearby home showed two hooded figures heading toward the Simentilli residence at 4:18 p.m. Fabio's black Porsche was gone, later found abandoned 5 miles away with blood droplets inside. But something was off. Detective Ryan Warner of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department noticed immediately. Fabio's Rolex was still on his wrist, untouched. His wallet was still in his pocket. Nothing in the house had been ransacked. No forced entry. No missing valuables. The timeline, too, felt unnervingly precise. Cameras captured the suspects heading toward the home at 4:18 p.m. At 4:53, the Porsche sped away. At 4:54, barely a minute later, Isabella pulled into the driveway. It was as if the killers knew exactly when Fabio would be alone. 3 days after the murder, Fabio's wife Monica held a memorial service in the same backyard where her husband had been stabbed to death. She appeared shattered, repeating, "I'm not a wife anymore," barely able to form sentences. Friends believed her grief was overwhelming, until someone noticed a stranger who didn't belong. Monica's friend Deborah Obard spotted him first, a man no one recognized, quietly mingling among Fabio's loved ones. Something about him was fundamentally wrong. He didn't fit the crowd, yet here he was, offering condolences with a bandage wrapped around his left index finger. Uneasy, Obard secretly took his photograph and gave it to police. That single image blew the investigation open. But the question remained, who was Robert Baker? And why would he want Fabio Simentilli dead? The answer would reveal a web of lies, obsession, and betrayal that had been quietly spinning for more than a year. Robert Louis Baker, 53, was nothing like the man he pretended to be. Working as a racquetball coach at an LA Fitness in West Hills, he came across as charismatic, confident, and magnetic, what one acquaintance described as an alpha male with a sexual energy about him. On the surface, he seemed successful and well-liked, always ready with encouragement, but behind that polished exterior lay a much darker truth. In 1993, Baker had been convicted of lewd acts with a minor, his own teenage stepdaughter. After serving prison time, he married the victim, and the two entered the adult film industry together. By 2016, he had reinvented himself as a fitness instructor, projecting respectability while keeping his predatory past well hidden. That was the year he met Monica Simentilli. At 45, Monica embodied everything Baker coveted: elegance, sophistication, wealth, and the comfortable lifestyle of a woman married to a successful man. She had 2 teenage daughters and appeared devoted to her husband of over 20 years. But according to Baker's later testimony, their affair began just weeks after they met at the gym in early 2016. What Monica did not realize was that she had stepped into the life of a sexual predator, one who had already destroyed a family and who was fully prepared to destroy hers. Baker immediately began isolating her. He persuaded her to use encrypted apps like Viber and burner phones,
communication channels that would hide their affair from Fabio. Investigators would later discover that nearly half of Monica's total communications were with Baker, more than with her husband and 2 daughters combined. In the fall of 2016, Monica's friend Deborah Obard grew suspicious. She noticed Monica spending more and more time at the gym, always around the same man. When Obard confronted her, Monica denied everything. Concerned, Obard quietly warned Fabio to pay attention to his wife's gym friends. Fabio brushed the concern aside. After 2 decades of marriage, he trusted his wife completely. Tragically, he had no idea that Robert Baker was already planning his murder. Late in 2016, Baker flew in a longtime friend, Christopher Austin, from Oregon, paying for the airline ticket himself. Austin, 36, worked as a parole and probation officer for at-risk youth. He believed he was visiting for a casual trip, a little racquetball, some California sunshine. He had no idea he was being groomed to participate in murder. Austin later testified that Monica invited both men to her home for dinner. She served pizza, gave them a detailed tour, and lingered in the backyard patio where Fabio often relaxed after work. She pointed out the layout, the exits, the blind spots. It was reconnaissance disguised as hospitality. Around the same time, Monica contacted a security company to upgrade the home surveillance system. The new setup allowed her to monitor the cameras from her cell phone, anywhere, anytime. She would know exactly when Fabio was alone. Baker took even more sinister steps. He bought GPS tracking devices and secretly placed them on both Fabio's vehicles, his everyday car and his prized black Porsche. He could monitor Fabio's movements in real time, tracking him like prey. To manipulate Austin, Baker claimed that Monica was trapped in an abusive marriage and needed protection. He painted Fabio as controlling and violent, a man who made Monica's life unbearable. Baker portrayed himself as her savior. But this narrative collapsed when Monica's daughter Jessica later testified that she once walked into her mother's bedroom and found Baker in her bed. This wasn't about rescuing Monica. It was about possession. Baker wanted her life, her money, her attention, everything, and he was prepared to kill for it. The financial motive was equally staggering. Fabio had a $1.6 million life insurance policy. If he died, Monica would inherit everything. There would be no divorce, no custody battle, no division of property. Just a grieving widow and her new boyfriend, funded by blood money. By late 2016, the plan was fully formed. All they needed was the right moment. On January 22, 2017, the day before the murder, Monica texted Baker, Fabio was heading to the store. According to Austin, this was their first attempt to kill him. Baker and Austin positioned themselves to intercept Fabio, weapons ready, adrenaline high. But something went wrong. Austin later said he couldn't go through with it. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe the timing wasn't perfect. Whatever the reason, Fabio survived that first attempt.
Whatever the reason, Fabio returned home safely that night, completely unaware that his wife had just attempted to have him killed. But Baker wasn't ready to let the plan go. He had invested too much, risked too much, and Monica had promised him everything, a new life, financial freedom, and a future funded by Fabio's life insurance. He told Austin that once Fabio was out of the picture, he and Monica could disappear together and live the life they deserved. The plan was simple. Stage the murder to look like a burglary, collect the insurance money, and start over somewhere far away. That evening, Monica played her role perfectly, comforting her daughters, acting like a loving wife, yet privately, her mind was already planning the funeral. The performance had begun. The trap was set. Fabio Simentilli had less than 24 hours to live. January 23, 2017. A date that would shatter families on both sides.
Monica's plan depended on precision. That afternoon, she drove away in her black Ford pickup, casually telling Fabio she was running to Target. Nothing unusual. Surveillance cameras captured her truck entering the parking lot around 4 p.m. But before she walked into the store, someone else slipped into her vehicle. Prosecutors believe that person was Robert Baker, receiving final instructions. Inside Target, Monica established her alibi, texting Baker that the coast was clear. Fabio was home, alone. Baker turned to Austin. "She's going to the store," he said. "We have a small window." Austin testified that Baker put him in the trunk of a rented Nissan and drove toward the Simentilli home. When they reached their staging point, Baker handed him a knife. "Are you with me?" he asked. "Like a dummy," Austin told the jury. "I said yeah." At 4:18 p.m., the two men jogged toward the house, looking like fitness enthusiasts out for a late afternoon run, captured on cameras throughout the neighborhood. Baker told Austin the front door would be unlocked. Monica would leave it open for them. When prosecutors asked Austin who she referred to, he answered instantly, "The defendant." The door was unlocked, exactly as planned. Fabio Simentilli was sitting peacefully on his backyard patio, unwinding by the pool after another productive day as vice president at Wella, one of the world's premier beauty companies. He had built his career from nothing, mentoring young stylists and earning respect across the industry. He never saw his attackers coming. Robert Baker stabbed him repeatedly, neck, face, chest. The assault was so savage that Baker sliced his own finger during the attack, the same finger that he would later show up with bandaged at Fabio's memorial service. Fabio had no defensive wounds. He never stood a chance. Sent by the woman he believed loved him, Baker and Austin fled in Fabio's Porsche, ditching it 5 miles away. The timing was flawless, executed like a choreographed killing. At 4:54 p.m., the Porsche sped away. At 4:54 p.m., Monica Isabella Simentilli pulled into the driveway. Her screams tore through the neighborhood as she found her father lying in a pool of blood. The 911 operator guided her through desperate attempts to save him, but the wounds were catastrophic. Fabio was already gone. Minutes later, Monica arrived to find police and paramedics swarming her home. Her performance began instantly. When her friend Elise Blumial arrived that evening, a stranger escorting her inside delivered a chilling warning. "Don't step in the blood." Monica sat trembling, repeating a single phrase over and over. "I'm not a wife anymore. I'm not a wife anymore." She appeared shattered, but behind the scenes, her priorities were exposed. That very night, before Fabio's body had even cooled, Monica began asking about his life insurance policy. She wanted to know when the $1.6 million payout would be released. The grief, it turned out, was just another act. Over the following months, Monica publicly played the devastated widow, while privately continuing her affair with Baker. Police surveillance caught them taking romantic trips to Las Vegas and Myrtle Beach. Monica even introduced herself to Baker's friends as Monica Baker, already living the fantasy life they believed was funded by Fabio's death. She called Detective Jean Parcell repeatedly, not to ask about suspects or leads, but to inquire about DNA results and updates on the insurance payout. She was more concerned about the money than justice. But investigators were watching her every move, every rendezvous, every phone call, every lie. By February 2017, Robert Baker had become the prime suspect. His DNA inside Fabio's stolen Porsche was incontrovertible evidence. When investigators questioned Monica about him, she claimed she barely knew him. She didn't even know his last name, she said. Just Rob, some guy from the gym. When confronted with the blood evidence in the Porsche, she spun a story so absurd that it only made things worse. She claimed she accidentally hit him with a racquetball racket and took home a bloody tower from the gym. Detectives didn't buy it for a second. For months, investigators quietly documented the secret lovers as Monica continued her charade as a grieving spouse.
The evidence against Monica Simentilli and Robert Baker was piling up. encrypted messages on burner phones, receipts for GPS tracking devices, and most damning of all, their ongoing romance while Fabio's body was barely cold. Detectives knew they needed a decisive break in the case. On June 14, 2017, police staged an elaborate sting operation. Monica and Baker were pulled over under the guise of a routine traffic stop. Officers claimed the vehicle might be stolen and needed to be checked. Both suspects were handcuffed and placed in the back of a patrol car equipped with hidden recording devices. Their whispered conversation in those tense minutes would later become key evidence at trial. Immediately after, they were arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder and first-degree murder. As they were booked into custody, the mountain of evidence surrounding them became unavoidable. Monica was placed in a cell with an undercover officer posing as an inmate. Believing she could trust her, Monica confided, "He's not just my lover, he's my confidant. He's my everything." Even behind bars, their illicit relationship continued. Police intercepted jail letters where Monica signed her name as Mrs. Baker and Monica Baker. In one disturbing note, she wrote, "It kind of hurts to not be touched, or fucked, or licked, or loved by you." Recorded jail calls captured Baker telling her, "I love you, baby. I really do." Despite facing murder charges, the pair remained fixated on one another, even attempting to plan a future together. Their delusion seemed absolute. Monica's trial began with devastating testimony from Christopher Austin, the parole officer who had helped carry out the murder. In exchange for a plea deal, Austin agreed to testify against her. His statements were damning. He described how Monica invited him and Baker to dinner under the guise of a routine social gathering, but was really giving them a reconnaissance tour of the Simentilli home. He detailed how she had specifically shown them the backyard, where Fabio would later be attacked. Austin also confirmed that Baker promised him a share of insurance money. But in a surprising twist, Robert Baker took the stand for Monica's defense. In an apparent attempt to save her, he insisted she had no knowledge of the murder plot. He claimed he acted alone because he was obsessed with her, wanting to be with her all the time. His testimony introduced a sliver of reasonable doubt, but prosecutors had already built a powerful case. The circumstantial evidence was overwhelming. The GPS trackers, the unlocked door on the night of the murder, Monica's perfectly timed alibi at Target, her immediate inquiries about insurance payouts, and the romantic getaways she took with Baker while Fabio's family mourned. Each detail pointed to Monica as the mastermind. Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman told the jury this was fundamentally a case about betrayal. Monica had deceived everyone, her husband, her daughters, her friends, even investigators. The prosecution emphasized her behavior after the murder. She left her teenage daughters alone in the very house where burglars supposedly killed their father. Why would a grieving mother do that unless she knew there was no real danger? Unless she knew exactly who the killers were? Monica's defense attorney argued she was guilty of stupidity, lying, adultery, but not murder. He claimed she was simply a foolish woman caught up in an affair, manipulated by Baker's obsession. The jury had a choice. Was Monica a naive woman ensnared by a dangerous lover, or the calculating architect of her husband's brutal killing? On April 11, 2025, after 8 hours of deliberation over 3 days, the jury delivered its verdict. Guilty. Monica Simentilli was convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder, with special circumstances for financial gain and lying in wait, charges that carry mandatory life without parole. On June 23, 2025, she was formally sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge stated plainly, "I do find that the defendant was the mastermind in this conspiracy to commit murder." Robert Baker had already been sentenced to life without parole after pleading non-contest. Christopher Austin received 16 years to life for cooperating with prosecutors. Monica Simentilli traded 20 years of marriage, her family's future, and her own freedom for a fantasy built on blood and betrayal. Her daughters lost both parents, one to murder, the other to greed and obsession. They must now live with the knowledge that their mother orchestrated their father's death. Fabio's son from his first marriage, Luigi, keeps his father's Rolex close. He wore this all the time. He wore it when he died. I wear it for special occasions when I want to feel close to him. The Rolex, the one that killers could have stolen but didn't, has become a symbol of what this case was truly about. It was never a burglary, never about stolen valuables. It was about a woman who wanted everything: passion, excitement, money, a new life, and was willing to destroy her family to get it. Fabio Simentilli built a beautiful life through hard work and generosity. He mentored young stylists, worked with Hollywood clients, and loved his family deeply. Several scholarships and educational programs now carry his name, extending his legacy of kindness. But his life was cut short at 49 by the person who knew him best, loved him least, and wanted his money most. In the end, Monica got exactly what she wanted: a life with Robert Baker, just not the one she imagined. Instead of luxury vacations and insurance money, they will spend the rest of their lives in separate prison cells, their twisted love affair reduced to monitored phone calls and letters read by guards. This case stands as a chilling reminder that the greatest danger can come from those closest to us, the person sharing our bed, our home, our children, the one who promises to love us until death do us part. Sometimes they mean it more literally than we could ever imagine.